you everybody for joining in today in this webinar titled, Is there a place for business change in the Business Analyst Toolkit? So this is a conversation about the relationship between business change and business analysis. Are they the same thing? Are they something different? Can they be related? Definitely food for thought. And we have Saffron Leopard, who is actually both. She is a very experienced speaker, and she's the lead business analyst, but also business change at Pets at Home, a British retailer selling pets, pet food, pet accessories, and offering veterinary services through Vets for Pets. And during her many years working as a business analyst for Ordnance Survey, the National Mapping Agency of Great Britain, Saffron set up a change advocates network and championed PROSI methodology and became a certified PROSI practitioner in 2019. And she was also a former director of professional development at the International Institute of Business Analysis at UK. We have until 8 for this webinar. It's going to be very participative. We have a number of polls that at some point I'm going to be putting in the chat. So we would like to know your opinion. And at the end of the presentation, we have some time for Q&A if you'd like any clarification, any questions, comments, anything. So now, Saffron, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Oh, and thank you, Rishma, for that lovely compliment I can see in the chat. I'm going to stop watching the chat now and concentrate on speaking. But yes, I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you for inviting me along. And I will tell the story. In fact, I'll just get my slides going and I'll tell the story of how I ended up here this evening. Is everything up? Yep. Can you see the slides okay? Yeah, we can lovely. See it. Excellent. Right, so I can't see you now, and I won't be looking at the chat myself, but if you've got any questions, I would suggest please hold them to the end. If it's a burning question, if you could put it in the chat and we can pick it up later. But the chances are I'm just going to keep going and then we'll do questions at the end. Possibly I might pause for breath in the middle, but otherwise I'm going to be just motoring through. Yeah, the story of how I ended up here. So as Maria was saying, that I now lead both the change team and the BA team at Pets at Home. And when this happened, I thought, because this is me, and you'll see as the evening goes on, I often look to the sort of standard professional bodies, such as the BCS, for kind of, you know, how should things be done? And I found that there's a business change group, the business change specialist group, which we are this evening. I found that that group was there and I thought they're going to know everything about business change. They're going to have all the answers for me. And when I spoke to Maria, I learned that actually we don't have all the answers in the BCS. And in order to get some answers, I might want to do this webinar. So that's why I'm here really, because I have a lot of questions around particularly the role of whether business analysts should be and do pick up business change responsibilities. So there's a few things I'm going to cover this evening and I'll go into that shortly. But that's how I ended up here. So I will just move on. This was the evening's planned content, and this is probably what caught your eye in the published short description of what the webinar would cover. And as you can see, there's a lot of questions that have floated around in my mind around this whole topic of, should business analysts be picking up business change? How does it work if there's a change team in place? Because there is one at Pets at Home. And as I say, I now lead that team. So I'm in a different position than I was so far in my career. And I have a lot of questions. I have some answers. And this evening, what I want to do is share with you some of the thinking that I have here and just get a bit of feedback, really, to learn from you, your thoughts as well. You will notice as time goes on this evening that I will go into what does business change really mean to me, when I came to the business change specialist group, what was it I was looking to find out about? And so I will go into that. And just to say that really, as an introduction, business change for me is about the people side of change. So we deliver systems, we deliver technology. What about the people side of change? That could be a simple way of sort of describing what I think business change is. You'll see as well that I are talking typically, therefore, about systems that impact on colleagues, on employees. Sometimes these projects will also impact on websites, apps, products that customers use. And in that case, there are different models that you would use to help make sure that lands well. But you would also still want your you would still want your employees to understand those products and be able to support them and be able to support those apps, etc. So you would be using change management, business change as I see it there. You'll notice probably this evening that the models that I talk about are probably more waterfall. And that is because in the space that I'm working at the moment, we are more waterfall in that space. But the models are transferable, and what I'm going to cover is transferable. So I think I'm hoping it's going to spark interest for you, and you may well give me some feedback on that, as I say, at the end. And you will notice that I will share models, references. These are things that I found from going away and researching. And I would recommend you go back to the original source and have a good look for yourself. As Maria said, I'm going to ask you a few questions in polls, and that's going to be really helpful to me to understand what you think and how other people are doing things, how other organisations are working. So really looking forward to getting to that. So the actual content for this evening, that was what I had planned about 3 months ago when I started to think I might run this, lead this webinar. The actual content is what you can see here. So we're going to be working from this grey box on the left. So I'm going to be looking at those industry models and what do they tell us about what do BAs do? And is there any business change in there? And so that's what I'm going to be looking at first. Then I'm going to go on to just to go into what is business change or change management. When I think of business change, what do I mean? And there are lots of different definitions out there which describe what business change is and why it matters. So we're going to delve into that. We're also going to look at how BAs can contribute, and we're going to go through the ADCAR process, which you may well be familiar with, but we'll go on to that later. And then I'm going to tell you a bit about what we're doing at Pets at Home and a recent change that we've made. So that is the planned content. How the evening will run, we've touched on this a little bit, 60 to 90 minutes. It is being recorded and it will be shared, and that will be within a few weeks. I think it will be made available. There will be some interaction by poll. I'm hoping it's going to work. We've done a little dry run. I may, not will, but I may stop and review questions and comments in the chat now and again with help from Maria. But so I would encourage you to only put something in there if you just worry that you might forget. Otherwise, hold on to your questions at the end. And depending on timing, we'll probably just go straight through. And then we'll have that open mic conversation after I finish presenting. And if you find it interesting, then I may well do a follow-on presentation with BCS, which could be in person. So we'll perhaps talk about that at the end. So a bit of an introduction to me. Maria has done a good introduction. So I think you know a fair bit about me already. And thank you, as I say, Rashma, for your lovely compliments. Yeah, I fell into the role, probably like a lot of you, quite a long time ago now. I was working at Barclays Asset Finance at the time. I came from the business, so I have a user's mindset. I'm not a technical person. People always think that, don't they? That when you work in IT, that you're going to know how to fix their printer or you're going to know what's wrong with their laptop. I don't know any of that. I've got a user's mindset. I have done the BCS training. Back when I did it, it was ISEB. So I have the BCS International Diploma. And so I've learnt a lot on BCS throughout my career to sort of define what I should be doing and to give me that starter for 10. And I became quite an active volunteer with IIBA. I have done quite a lot of speaking. It's been a little while, so I may be a bit rusty. And as I mentioned earlier, as Maria mentioned, I've gained the ProSci practitioner certification. That is one of my favourite models. So you will be hearing a little bit more about that later. So for me as a BA, I really want to know what success looks like, and I get frustrated if my team or the project just focus on the technology and not the outcomes and benefits. I do want to facilitate change, not just software. So that's a little bit more about me. So the first poll, Maria, if you could put the first link in, I'm going to stop presenting and then go and see the results come in. So how this should work is if you could click on the link that Maria is about to share, there's a short series of questions. If you could respond, then we will see the results come in live. And that's probably the easiest and cheapest way, as I understand it, to do this kind of poll at the moment. So I'm going to swap over to the results. And responses. Here we go. Responses are starting to come in. So just give it a few moments and see responses coming in, and then we can review. This is really helpful for me to understand what's going on out there, who's on the call, what your interests are. Also, how long you've been in the profession, because again, that really helps me to know just how much time I should be taking on certain aspects, how seasoned you are, what experience you have, etc. So I think we're probably getting to a full set now. And these results as well, you'll see them on the recording, but I can also make them available. So we've got quite a range of roles here, primarily a business analyst, which is what I was expecting, because as I say, this is primarily intended to be for business analysts, but I think it's going to be relevant for a lot of other different roles. And I can see we've got quite a few change managers here, which I would also expect, and then a range of other different roles. So thank you for that. Is there a change management team where you work? Yes, in IT, about 25%. Yes, elsewhere, about 37%, and not where I work. So again, that's going to be really interesting, because if you don't have a lot of knowledge of what a change management team do, then you'll pick that up. And if you do have a change team, then you can consider how well you're working with them. And so I'm hoping that would be really helpful for you this evening. How long have you been in the profession? I'm not the only one who's been around quite a few years by the looks of it. But we do have some who are down in the newer end of the spectrum. So I will bear that in mind as we move forwards. Would you say business change should be in the BA toolkit? I love this, because I wanted to know what people say, and I can see here that at the moment just one person says no, and everybody else is saying yes. So we will go back to this at the end, and we get some input from you as to why you said that. So thank you so much. That's worked really well. Let's jump back into the presentation. So the first section now that I'm going to go through is exploring these professional bodies. And industry models such as BCS, what do they tell us that BCAs should be doing with reference to business change? What should BAs do? What services do they offer? Is business change in there? That's where I went to see what I could find out about how it should be done, if there is such a thing. So one of the places I looked is Assist. If you may well know Assist KD. Assist KD stands for Knowledge Development. They're basically a training and consultancy company, group of people who really focus on the business analyst role. They do all sorts of different services, and they do some free services. And one of the things they've done is taken the Sophia skills. And again, if you don't know about Sophia, I would encourage you to go and have a look. It's a free resource which sets out all of the key skills that an organisation would typically need to deliver technical change, and I think also to run IT services. So there's a whole range of skills in there, and that's constantly changing. Recently gone to to version 9. So what assists have done is they've taken those skills, and they've said, well, we think a BA would need these skills. So they've kind of built an out of the box BA job family. That's when I first looked at Assist and found this model. So I pulled it out again recently just to show you what they say that a BA could or should be doing. And this isn't exhaustive. I've spoken to Lawrence, who may be on the call. If you are, hello, Lawrence. I've spoken to Lawrence about this, and this is the start of a 10. That you may say that your team don't do all of this. They do other things. They do things as well. But your typical BA is going to be using these Sophia skills. So when you look at this, and just as I say, look at the original source, but this is a mix of what they call their professional and consultant roles. So at the top level, they would expect their more senior BAs to be able to exhibit these skills. And I looked at this and I was thinking, well, is there any business change in there as I would see it? And again, change you could think is all about the hearts and minds. And I think possibly this one does have a little bit of change in there, because they talk about implementing a culture. So that definitely gets my ears and radar going. I think this is some change related skills that they suggested in the BA toolkit, but not much really.
Saffron, there's a prompt at the bottom of the screen about sharing. Can you get?
Oh, okay. Do you want me to get rid of that?
See your lovely slides.
Okay. Is it gone now?
Oh, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay, on to the next one. So the next place I looked is IIBA, and as you know, I've volunteered for IIBA for quite a long time, and so I'm pretty familiar with the BABOK, their BA body of knowledge. And when you look at what IIBA says BAs do, this is the closest I got to sort of a standard definition. They have their model they call the BA CCM, the BA core concept model. Again, some of you may be familiar with that. That's the triangle bit here. And then they also describe the core knowledge areas as these. So you can go away and dig into it a little bit, but the core standard knowledge areas, there's nothing really in there about implementation, about making things work successfully, about helping people buy into solutions, about helping them adopt. There's nothing in there about user acceptance testing, about business readiness, all of those things that to me, about communicating about the change, that suggests to me that IIBA do not see the BAs as having any involvement in business change. And I have the definition here of what they call changes here, in case that perhaps contained it. And their definition here of change in this context is the act of transformation in response to a need. So basically they're saying that the BA role is to improve on problems or to capitalise on opportunities. They're not saying that they should help to make the change successful, particularly. So that is my view of IIBA and what they've got to say, which suggests to me that BAs, because IIBA perhaps I would say it's more popular outside of the UK, which suggests to me that if you're a BA working in the States or Canada or maybe Australia, you're definitely not going to be involved in change management, and there may be change managers around you, more likely, perhaps. That's the sort of thing I'm really keen to hear about from you at the end. So the next place I looked is the BCS BA Service Framework, and obviously we're on a call with the BCS Special Interest Group in Business Change. So I'm really interested in what the BCS have to say. So I just realised I've skipped over loads of slides or put them in the wrong order. Don't have any notes on that yet. Right, okay. So the service framework was introduced, and I don't know if you can see me, but this is the book, which I know many of us will call the Green Book, the BCS Green Book, which is the kind of BA Bible for BCS, from the BCS that's published. It tells us what what they think BAs should be doing. And this was created by Debra Paul and added to version 3. When I started as a BA, it was a version 2, that book. And now I believe it's version 4. And I think this was added in version 3. And it's incredibly useful because when you start, if you were to start leading a BA team and you want to just do a bit of a checkpoint to say, what am I offering as a BA service to my customers, to my organization, then this is a good place to go to say, well, here's a start for 10. So you can see from here that what they suggest is included is business change deployment. So that is, and yeah, I've lost my notes on that. But business change deployment really is all about, and the definition of it is in the book, it's all about adoption and achieving benefits. So that for me is a business change element. Business acceptance testing possibly also. So what I then did is I then went on and did a bit of a mapping. This is real BA stuff now. I did a bit of a mapping, very rough and ready. But I then looked at when I was working at Barclays Asset Finance, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't believe. But when I was working there, where did I spend my time across those services? And actually, a lot of my time was spent on that right-hand side, particularly in the business change deployment side. I was there for about 5 years as a BA. This was a long time ago now, but whilst I was there, we did lots of training. We designed training, we delivered training, we did loads of comms. We stood up and walked people through. We were involved in business transition planning, business readiness. We floor walked. When anything went live, we were there to hold people's hands. We did lessons learned reviews, and there were some attempts to track benefits. So I spent a lot of time on that side and some time on the left-hand side. And so interesting to note, there was no change team there. So if there had been a change team, that might have been different. But whilst I was a BA at Barclays Asset Finance, I would say I was picking up business change. But then look at my time spent at Ordnance Survey, done the same thing and slightly different. Key thing to note there is I was there for 16 years, which is quite a long time. And so things did change, which is why I've got a little star, because that changed really down the bottom. But on the whole, this is reasonably representative. We spent quite a lot of time as BAs looking at business cases, probably less time looking at checking the output at the other end. It was more justifying the investment and less checking whether we'd achieved the investment. To be honest, we were rarely there when the project moved on. When the project got beyond requirements definition, and we were then delivering. We'd moved on often by that point to the next business case and the next set of requirements. And so we weren't involved in acceptance testing and business change deployment. In fact, the idea of acceptance testing was quite, there wasn't a lot of that went on. And the testing was largely done by the technical team. And there wasn't, in my view, enough effort given to business change deployment, enough consideration given. And there was no change team. So those areas were neglected, I think. And I did, as we've said, I did campaign in the last few years of my time being there, and created a business change advocates network to try and address that, and campaigned with the people leader and was able to get, because there was quite a lot of strong people change going on. We were replacing our people system, we were replacing our finance system. So because of that, she was keen to make sure that we did pick up the hearts and minds, the change management side of it. So she sponsored a few of us to do the ProSci training, and I then led the change comms and training element of the ERP replacement program for the last couple of years. So that's why the bottom right-hand side there has got a little asterisk, because that did start to grow. So 3 years ago now, I moved to Pets at Home, which includes Vets for Pets and pet screening. And the BA role here, again, is different. Primarily, we are involved in requirements definition, and less so in, as you might expect, in this side, because we have a change team. So in this case, that's taken away that element of the BA role. It's taken care of by a different discipline. And actually, the role here at PETS is probably the most narrow, because at the front end, we lean more into the architecture space. Again, this could change. This is a bit of a snapshot in time, but that's my interpretation of my experience over the years. I've then picked out the V model because, again, I think this is a really good, interesting model. Yes, you might say it's there for waterfall, but it works in sprints as well. You can look at a project moving through sprints through the V model. But just to give a brief overview of how it works for anyone who doesn't know, and I've shown here that it has evolved over time. I think it started like that and then has become this. Again, you'll find this in the BCS book. Looks like Assist had some involvement in growing the V model. So how it works basically is, the idea is that you, almost like the project life cycle, top left hand side, you're trying to work out, what do we need to do, why do we need to do it, do we really need to do it? So then you're putting together your business case, which says the sort of cost benefit analysis, and then that tracks across to the right hand side, in as much as you would then review the benefits to say, did we achieve those? Then moving down, you've got, once you've got your business case, you move into defining requirements. And then if you track across, then you would check you've got your requirements have been met at that level by doing user acceptance testing. Obviously, it's quite simplified, but it's a really good model to show how you move down the left-hand side in levels of detail. You get closer to the technical solution. At the bottom, you develop the technical solution. You then test the different parts. You test the parts coming together. You then do your business acceptance testing, and then you're live and you review your benefits. And according to this model, business analysts work across this whole spectrum. So again, I found this quite interesting to think about. What do business analysts do? Should they be doing all of this? How does it work if you are not doing all of this? Who's doing it? Questions, questions, questions. I then mapped the BA service framework to the V model, because why not? And it does fit. It doesn't quite, basically all of those on the left translate to these top two, but I couldn't really show that. And then all of those on the right translate to these top right. And so, yeah, it does map. And I then did a quick review of the BCS book, which is interesting, actually. And the Green Book, the Bible, it does show that actually when you look at it, it's only a very small percentage talks about how BAs do this. So really, although the service model shows 6 different services, when you look at the textbooks, actually only about 6% of the content covers these 2 services. So that's 94% is covering the left-hand side. So I'm interested, does that reflect the reality? Because in my experience, as I say, I've worked in all different parts of the spectrum. I've worked in all of those areas, but what about you? I got a bit carried away. Oh, time for a second poll. Okay, let's go for the second poll. Maria, if you could drop that into the chat, that would be fab, and I will go and share the screen. Sorry, I'm just checking. I thought I'd lost you then, but I think you're still there.
I'm still here.
Lovely. I thought, oh my God, I've been talking.
No. I'm leaving you the floor, but I'm here.
Excellent. That's good. Well, she's probably messaging me saying, where are you? Oh, this is fabulous. So great to see. Might just get a few more responses. That's really interesting, isn't it? So this is the bread and butter, really, isn't it? If you're a BA and you're not doing that, I'd be quite surprised. So I'd expect that to be the highest. Next highest, business process improvement. That I would expect to. Not everybody's doing feasibility and business cases. I can see why that might be the case. This is great to see that lots of people are involved, lots of you on the call are involved at the early stages. Business acceptance testing we're not quite so involved in that. There's quite a few people saying they have some involvement. And then business change deployment, 7 people on the call are not involved at all. 15 people are saying they are involved, but not a huge amount. And then there's a few saying they do loads. So this is wonderful to see. So thank you for that. Let's go back into the presentation. So yes, just to run through this quickly, I got a bit carried away. I then had a look at the BCS International Diploma and said, well, what business change is in there? You're probably familiar with the BCS International Diploma in Business Analysis. If you're not, then you have to do both these modules, one out of here and one out of here. As I say, I've done the certification. In fact, there's some that I've done the module more than once. And what you could say is that these elements probably cover business change. And so technically it is possible to do the training and gain the certification without really covering any business change, because you could pick different modules there. And then I got so carried away, I then looked at those other modules and said, well, actually, how much business change is in those? And again, as I say, this is SAF's interpretation, so do go off and find out for yourself. But based on this, even the business change module really only covers a small amount, but it's actually around business change. In fact, the most relevant area is probably benefits management and business acceptance. So yeah, I've gone off a bit carried away there. So a bit of a pause and reflections from me. And yeah, we're about where I expected to be in time. So I'm going to not open the floor at this point, but just to say, we're about halfway through me speaking. And I hope I've given you some food for thought. Doing this, getting ready for this session and looking at these models, reflecting on what I've done throughout my career, what's been needed, where I've worked outside of that very bread and butter requirements engineering spot, has helped me to sort of think through, where do we go at Pets at Home and what should we be doing? The models really help, I think, to check in now and again, look at the offerings that you're putting out there. What is the standard? Almost like to check against the menu of what BAs could or should be doing and seeing how you compare. But there isn't an authoritative standard, really. BCS is the closest for me, but the change aspects do feel like they're less important and perhaps more optional as a BA. And I think that the poll results show that. There's definitely more going on that left-hand side of the model. So as I said, I think I can only assume that outside the UK, there's a lot more change managers, given that IIBA don't even show change as being in the BA wheelhouse. Thinking about each organisation and where I worked, I can see that each organisation does have different needs. There's also different roles around you. This is the first time I've worked with a change team around me. Quite a few of you on the call do have a change team next to you. So you'll have a different experience and be coming to this with the view that I am now. Those of you who don't will be perhaps wanting to know, what do I do then? How can I fill that gap if I think I want to, if I see there's a need? And things do change over time, organisations change, and people have preferences. I do love the top half of the V model. I do love the change side of it. I don't particularly want to get lost in really technical projects. Also sort of reflected on the V model, you know, the more points you have, the more handover points you have in there. Let's just see if I can go back. Might be quite a long way. Yeah, it's quite a long way. So if you go back, here we go, V model. And yeah, the more handover points you've got in here, the more likely you are to lose knowledge. So there is an argument to say that this could, there's benefits in a BA covering the whole of this, because every time you hand over from left to right or hand over from top to bottom, then you could potentially be losing knowledge. So that is true. But you could also argue that you need to be a specialist to help roll out change. And actually the V model doesn't really explain what other change activities need to be carried out at that time. So just going to find my way back to where I was. So on to the next section. What is business change or change management then? What do other experts and professional bodies say? And why does it matter? I hope to convince you that it does if you're not sure. I'm going to skip this poll because when I looked at it last night, I thought, actually, I'm not sure it's really telling me anything. So let's skip that. So you'll remember that Assist KD put together the Sophia skills, packaged them up and said, this is what we think a BA does. So I've not found one for a BCM, Business Change Manager, as yet. So I've done my own. And these are the Sophia skills that I think a business change manager would be using. So I'm just going to have a quick walk through them. Business process improvement, that is one that also appears in the BA model from Assist. Organisational capability and development, creating new and potentially disruptive approaches to perform business activities. I think that one also appears in the BA suggestion, or it might be the next one. Organisational design and implementation. Yeah, it was that one, wasn't it? Because it talked about culture. There's quite a lot in here about organisational change. So you've got change management, you've got job analysis and design, you've got change enablement, which very much rings true to me. This is what I call business change, facilitates cultural and behavioural change by enabling individuals and teams to embed new ways of working and to adopt to changes. And like we were saying, if you've got a new finance system, a new people system, or if you've got a new product that you want your staff to sell, they have to be bought into that. They have to be able to work with it. So that is very much bread and butter business change management. Learning, design and development, and learning delivery are also Sophia skills that I think are in the change managers skill set. So if you're working in an area where you've got change managers, I think they're going to be doing a lot of these things. If you're working in an area where you don't, and you're a BA, you might want to look at these skills and consider, are you leaning on those, leaning into those to help make your projects more successful? So there's a couple of other models I've looked at. The Change Management Institute. Now, I'm pretty unfamiliar with the Change Management Institute as it happens. So all I've done here is just pick out this to give you a bit of a taster. You can find out what they have to say about change management. But they have said their definition is that change management represents a domain of principles and practices that enable stakeholders of change to adopt the mindsets, behaviours and capabilities required for that change to deliver full business value. It focuses on people. And they then talk about different stages: define, analyse, engage and co-design, align and refine. And you'll spot quite a lot of things on there that they are saying that a change manager would do, or a change management discipline would do. So Change Management Institute, I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not going to spend long on that, but that is another definition available to you. Now we're into ProSci, which I do know a lot more about, so I do spend a bit more time talking about ProSci. And ProSci stands for Process and Science. ProSci is a worldwide organisation, which are, and what they do is they research what's working well in our change delivery spaces. How do you make change more successful? How do you get people adopting? How do you get the benefits you want? And they then turn that into, use that to refine their methodology. So it's kind of results based, are used to sort of refine and improve the framework. So they say that change management is driving change success by preparing, equipping and supporting individuals to thrive through change. And it's an enabling framework for managing the people side of change. There's a few diagrams here that I love. I love a diagram and they really bring it to life for me. So according to ProSci, if you've got change management, you're going to get what you set out to have. So it's been described to me that when you write your business case, you may well be saying, we're going to get this amount of revenue, we're going to stop people wasting all this time. And actually, if you don't get that amount of revenue and people do waste more time, they carry on with inefficient activities because they haven't really bought into the new ways of working, you're not going to achieve the success that you set out to do. So change management is to help you avoid those gaps. Another really nice way of showing it, if you fail to get the buy-in from the hearts and minds of your people, you're going to get that lower return on investment. You're also going to start to build a bit of a history of failed changes, and people are more likely to think, what, another change? Oh gosh, that one didn't go very well. I'm not looking forward to this. And you can lose people along the way. And I also love this diagram that shows, this is what I was talking about before, the technical side and the people side. If you really focus on just getting the systems out there, I've delivered the software, it's out there, and I've done the job. Great. But you really, I think, need to bring in the people side. Otherwise, you're not going to get the engagement, you're not going to get the adoption, you're not going to get the use. So that, without that, you could risk having a project that's delivered a system that nobody uses, or that people don't use in the way that they should be using, so you don't get the benefits. So I love these slides from ProSci. And again, it's just another view that shows that every individual needs to change. Everyone that needs to change needs to change. If it's not relevant, obviously not relevant. But if you're one of those people using the people system, using the finance system, helping to support your customers, helping to sell a new product, then you need to get the full picture. You need to get the full transition, really. So I'm also going to introduce ADKAR, which comes from ProSci. I suspect quite a lot of you will also know ADKAR. If you don't, quick introduction. ADKAR stands for, it's an acronym for these 5 different stages that ProSci have found that individuals, they all need to go through this ADKAR journey. They don't have to go through it kind of, what they do have to do is they have to go through it in sequence. So you can't go straight to knowledge. And the great way of describing this is if I said to you, you're going to be going on a training course on Tuesday, it's going to train you in a new time recording system. You might then be thinking, I didn't know that was coming. What? Why am I going to that training? I don't use time recording at the moment. Do I have to do that? Why do I have to do that? And if you don't get those questions answered, you're going to turn up in the training course and not really be in the right mindset to get behind it. So you could walk away having been through the training, but you don't really want to use this system because you don't know what it's all about. So that's a great way of describing it. You need to go through all of these stages. You need to be sort of first just given a bit of a tip off. This is coming. going to be changing our processes. We're going to be doing time management now, time recording now, and we're going to do this because, and actually you should be on board with this because there's some benefit to you, or there's a organizational benefit that you will be interested in. And if you go through those steps, you're going to turn up for the training course thinking, yeah, okay, right, I'm ready for this. I know why I'm using it. I know when I'm going to use it. And so you're then able to take on the training. Ability is another key area of change management theory and practice, because you walk out of that training session, or you've done a module, an online module, it's told you how to do time recording. It's only when you start using it that you're going to be able to use it competently. So using it competently is key. Just being able to use it isn't enough. You need to be able to use it competently. Otherwise, you're not going to get those benefits. Reinforcement is the final stage that ADKAR requires. So once you've started using that system, the time recording system, it might take a little while to get in the new habit. Yeah, I know how to use it. Have you done it yet? Oh, I've forgotten. Do I really have to do it? Those are the things that could start to happen if you haven't got reinforcement. So what I'm going to talk about next is how can BA's knowledge and deliverables contribute to the ADKAR processes? And if there's no change managers in place, what should BAs do? So this is SAF's thinking. Hopefully give you some thinking to take away, something to discuss. I'm going to go through each of the stages now, talk about the typical business change manager deliverables, and then on the left, talk about the BA typical deliverables and how they can help individuals through those stages. So awareness, like we've said, employees need to know what's changing. Why is this needed? Why now? What if we don't make the change? And so we can align everyone around common goals. Well, if you look at these BA deliverables, they're going to give you a lot of that information. They're going to tell you who's likely to be involved, your vision statement, why are we doing this, what's the vision for introducing this time recording system, and then the goals. Okay, that's the vision. What are we actually going to do? How are we going to measure this? You may well have gone through business options and business cases to say, we think this is worth it. We think we're going to save a lot of time, or we're going to get lots of insights, make better decisions, etc. You've probably got some high level requirements. All of these are going to really help with the awareness stage. These are the sorts of deliverables that BCMs, business change managers, would be producing. They would be also looking at stakeholder analysis with a slightly different perspective. They might then be thinking, well, who's going to be anti? Is there anyone going to be anti this? Who do we need to make sure is on board? How am I going to build stakeholder engagement plans? I'm going to need to start thinking about who the sort of cohorts and when I'm going to meet with them, how I'm going to interact with them. I'm going to start building a communication plan, because maybe I can already set up a page, like a SharePoint page or an intranet page that shows people this is coming. And the sponsors are really key, and ProSci talks about that a lot more. Sponsors really need to help you as a BA or a business change manager or a project manager or whatever role you're playing. They need to be actively and visibly visible. And so often you'll need a sponsor plan. And then you may start building actual communication. So all of the things that the BAs have got that I've set out on the left will really help to build that awareness up and will feed into some of these business change deliverables. The desire stage in ADKAR, well, once employees have got that awareness, they're going to say, right, okay, this time recording system, well, why should I do it? And sometimes it's a carrot and sometimes it's a stick. But either way, they need to accept or buy in to the fact that they're going to be involved. And if they really genuinely want to change, then they help to drive success. So desire, that's what we're looking at here. These are some of the things that business analysts typically do that help to make that case, help us to pass individuals through the desire stage. Benefit statements and maps, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, if you can see what the benefits are how it relates to the change. That's a really great way of being able to turn that into statements for employees and colleagues to say, this is why you need to get involved. Pain point analysis, equally. What are the pain points? Let's get away from those. You've always had these gripes. We're going to sort it out for you. And then as is and to be processes start to show the changes, that what's changing, it was this, now it's going to become that. So these are some fantastic deliverables that can feed into change collateral. These are some of the things that change managers do that map to the desire stage. So you've got change impact assessments, and that show where the changes are going to hit and where they're going to hit hardest. You've got people manager plans. Sponsors and people managers are really, ProSci research shows that they are vital. If your line manager does things a certain way and is really bought into it, you're much more likely to do it yourself. So people managers, ideally we target first and we give them, keep them ahead of the pack. Change management plans, change readiness checklists and plans. These, again, the sort of things that you would expect to be seeing in the desire stage in ADCAR. And a change agent network plan. Change agents, sometimes called super users, advocates, they can be really vital, and they will need to be brought in. They need to have the desire, and then they can help to permeate that along. And then, of course, again, you've got actual communications. Knowledge stage. The knowledge, this is really about the classroom training or the knowledge share, the briefings in the new processes, tools, systems and behaviours. This equips you with what you need to do and how you're going to do it, but it might give you a small amount of practice, but ability is the next stage. So what can BAs do that really helps to sort of bring out that knowledge? Use cases, user stories, they are vital in, even if you're, as a BCM, you can't work, you need the actual system to really begin to understand what the system's going to do. But if you've got use cases and user stories, you can begin to see the chunks, you can begin to see there's going to be this and that and that. And then with the user roles and access permissions too, you can see who's going to be using those use cases. Maybe there's one role that has most of the use cases, and then there's another role that only has one, and then the majority of the people maybe are doing certain use cases. So you can begin to put together a view of who's going to need to be trained and who's going to have the most impact. To be processes, again, are really vital in helping to see where those changes are going to land. Documented workarounds often come from BAs who will be helping to work out what is and isn't in scope of the project. This isn't in scope anymore, so here's how we're going to have to deal with it. Target operating models really give you that whole team context of potential job changes, team changes. So all of those, I think, feed into these business change deliverables. Ability stage in ADCAR. Well, this is where building ability is about turning knowledge into action. So there's often a gap between knowing how to do something and being able to do it effectively. So once you've had the training, it's not enough just to then go off and not do it. You need to actually do it. You need to have someone on hand who can help you. Potentially you need more practice time. You may need drop-ins, clinics, that sort of thing to help build your confidence and competence. So what do BAs contribute here? Well, I don't think there's any deliverables as such, unless you've got some of these BCM deliverables that we're talking about in your BA offering. But BAs are typically experts in the way the system and business are supposed to work, the to-be state. They know the teams, they know the people, they know the reason why we're changing quite well. They may well have supported or led user acceptance testing, so they can make excellent coaches and participants in change networks, floor walking, at and following transition. So how does this equate to what BCMs would be doing to help with ability? Coaching plans is one we've not mentioned before. So BCMs may well produce coaching plans. And then there's other things that we've already talked about that they then start to put into action to help us get to help individuals reach the required level of ability and competence and confidence. Reinforcement stage in ADCAR. This is the final stage. This really sustains those benefits. Like I say, if you don't do reinforcement, you might find people sliding back into the old habits because it's easy, because they've still got the option of doing it this way, because they never really understood why we're doing it in the first place. So reinforcement is really there to do that kind of carrot and stick, celebrate the successes, and remind people of why we're doing this. So again, there's no BA deliverables as such in this stage, I don't believe, but we may well continue to be involved in early life support. We may perform lessons learnt, post-implementation reviews, which should help feed into reinforcement deliverables and activities, and BAs may well be involved in benefit reviews. On the business change side, these are the new deliverables that help with reinforcement. Again, otherwise, beginning to lean on some of these action plans created earlier. So we're into, where are we? Yeah, we're getting in towards the next, possibly the final section. We'll find out. What do our change managers do at Pets at Home? What is our BA BCM setup? And I want to talk to you about some recent changes in the BCM service here at Pets at Home. So the team structure and context here at Pets at Home. This is a very simplified diagram just to give you a bit of an insight into the team and how it works. On my side, the orange side, we sit in IT change delivery and we report to the CIO. We work within a CDLC, a software development lifecycle, in fact, a change development lifecycle. We have a governance, which is a governance framework. We've got defined stage gates, checklists, templates, reporting as you might expect. And then outside of our immediate structure, you've got a number of different departments, but I've zoned in on this because we've got BAs who live in another part of the organisation. This is quite a recent change, but the software BAs now report to a lead and they report into the head of software delivery. So outside of this, my immediate structure, we've got the architects, the engineers, software BAs, project managers and tests, they sit inside here with us. But yeah, I've just tried to keep it focused. And to give you a bit of context as well, we've got 7 BAs in this portfolio business analysis team, 2 senior BAs, myself, and then in the business change team, we've got 4 business change managers. So there's a few differences in how we work. The portfolio BAs, we work primarily on procurements, which tends to be a bit more waterfall, generally more colleague-facing projects rather than customer-facing. Change is driven by business colleagues. Actually, it's quite interesting to think about that these sponsors who want the change, they've got a day job, but they also want this change. So in this area, that's where we're primarily working as BAs. The software BAs, for them, it's much more about those customer-facing websites, the apps, the store devices, and they're changing systems and apps that generate revenue and build customer relationships. More often or not, they're working on building products with agile methodology, and there's lots of focus there on the designs and look and feel. They're driven by product owners whose job it really is to produce those products. The interesting thing is, of course, it's not quite as simple as that. Sometimes our BAs work on projects that span across both, and our business change team, they certainly work across both. So it's really hard to put all this into a single diagram. I just wanted to give you a bit of an insight before we move on. So when I took on the team, the business change management team at Pets, there was already a message that change is everybody's responsibility. And why is that? Well, partly because we want to build that collective culture, and partly a response to reducing numbers in the BCM team. And also, I sort of reflecting on why is that? And I think really it's because our business change managers have been primarily come from within. So they are people who have good knowledge of Pets at Home. They've got great domain knowledge, and therefore they've done the business change role, but they've often springboarded onto another career within Pets at Home, rather than they're a professional sort of change manager who goes on and does change somewhere else. So my brief was to finish what had been started. So we had this concept that change is everyone's business, but change is everybody's business. But what does that really mean then? If you're a BA, what should I do then? And if you're a PM, well, what should I do? And so I worked on that, and you'll see that what I've done there shortly. And also why we built this model is because, you know, an awareness that it's not a one size fits all model. Some projects have a higher need for business change, and some projects don't. So there was a model that was already started by my predecessor, and then I worked on refining that. And it is partly inspired by ProSci, so you'll see that shortly. So before we rolled the model out, we asked our project managers and our business analysts, because those are the roles that we are now asking to pick up some business change management responsibilities on certain projects. So we asked them this question: how comfortable would you be in leading business change? And there was a caveat after that to say, in certain situations with support. So the results are quite interesting. You'll see that of the 12 business analysts asked, the average rating there was 3.25, and you've got quite a lot of variation there. You've got 4 people who are, yep, no problem at all, and then 4 people like, not sure. And then these were the comments. So in essence, the comments that came out from that team. And we also asked the project managers, so 11 responses there, and quite different there. You can see that whilst there were some more comfortable in leading business change, the majority were saying, no, not so keen on that, thank you. And then you can see really that a lot of that was around capacity. And the point about is this a slippery slope was people's concerns. Are we actually going to retain the change management specialism and the change management role? And we are, but they showed that they're concerned about that. I'm aware of time. I'm going to crack on because I have got a fair bit more to get through. So we'll definitely do questions at the end. So apologies, please hold your questions and I will speed up a little bit. So I'm now going to talk you through the model. So the model then we use now to determine at an early stage as a project starts up, well, how much support does it need from change management? And we use this model. It is new, and so it hasn't really been proven yet. It's not scientific. It's more a question of discussion, and then we decide where does this project sit. If it sits towards the right-hand side, you're going to get a business change manager assigned to your project, and they will take the lead on the business change activities. If it sits a long way to the left, then we're of the view that there's no business change needed. It's so small that you don't need support from a BCM. You can go off and do that without support. If it falls somewhere in the middle, this is the new service. So this is where we're saying, actually, this is manageable for you as a business analyst and as a project manager. We think this is manageable. It's quite small scale. There's a small number of teams being impacted. Maybe it's a very positive change, actually. You've got a really great sponsor who can really get on board with this. There's no third parties involved. So these are the sort of questions that we're asking. And we are now sometimes saying, actually, we want you BAs and you PMs and the sponsor to take on the business change. And in that area, we then say, this is now the consulting service. So what do you get? You get 2 simple templates. I'll give you a bit of a view on those shortly. You've got some SharePoint guidance and examples of those templates. You've got a BCM who's available for guidance at tricky moments, but then they're not there permanently. You know, it's down to you to lead this, and they're there occasionally when you need them. It is flexible according to need, and really you own the deliverables project. So that's you BA, and you project manager. There's 2 key documents for those consulting projects. And you'll see that there's quite a lot of what we talked about earlier. And these are really just 1 page each. And the idea of this is it's a bit of a prompt, a bit of an aid memoir. So, for example, recognition plan. you might not think about that, but it's now in the template and you've got some guidance that helps you to think, actually, I probably do need to put some effort into recognition. You can talk that over with the sponsor, you can get some ideas, and you can start to build that into the project, which without having a BCM there and without having this to help you, you may not have thought about. So that is our model. What is, I say that's very recent. What's next for our BAs and our business change managers? I am pretty fresh to the role. I've spent quite a lot of time so far looking at the model that I've just talked about, but there's a couple of things just to give you a hint for what we're going to be doing next. One of which is this Venn diagram. Love diagrams, me. And the story of this is that we started it about a year ago between myself and then lead of the business change managers to look at potential overlaps between what do BAs do and what do business change managers do. And we found it really useful. And in fact, he then found it useful to take it on and talk to some of the adjacent roles for the business change team. So spent some time talking to project managers, spent some time talking to internal comms and learning and development. And I've picked this up now and I want to revive this because I think it's really great to use something like this to build empathy with each other, to clarify boundaries and avoid duplication, improve collaboration and handovers. So I'm planning to revisit and revive that. Another thing that's on my plan is benefit dependency networks. Now, you may already be all over these. We're not as prolific in using these as I think we could be. And particularly, I think it's a great one for BAs and BCMs to collaborate on. So this is a bit of an example. Go away and have a look at benefit dependency networks if you haven't already seen them, because they're great at almost on a page showing you what are we trying to achieve. So it helps to cover the ADKAR, awareness, desire, why are we doing this? And then it also starts to show you some of those changes as well. So it can help identify business changes that maybe weren't in your plan. My conclusions, we're nearly done. Got one more poll to put out after this, but my conclusions are, if you want to change how things are done, I think you really need to do change management. What does doing change management mean? Well, it means you're going to need an active commitment, and that requires knowledge and skills and time. And I've given you a bit of an insight, if you're not already doing change management, as to what that might require. I also have come to the conclusion, really, that professional bodies supporting and guiding business analysts do not give detailed, definitive answers. Oh, I wish they did. And where there is no one leading on change management, I think business analysts are well placed to step forwards. And it was interesting, actually, that at the beginning, the majority of you were in agreement to that. Where there is a change management team in place, working closely with each other is extremely beneficial. And I hope I've given you some insights as to how you might do that more effectively. And of course, both BAs and BCMs are vital to ensure that sponsors achieve their desired outcomes. And because that's what it's all about, really. So, Maria, could you put the final number 4 into the chat, and we'll have a look at the results of that, and then it's open question time.
Yes, it's in there.
Lovely. I'm going to just jump over to that. I'm being brave and asking, getting the live results of what you thought. So do be honest. And I think, as I will say later, I've got loads of, I'm more than happy to talk through and talk more on this. I'd love to talk more on this with you via LinkedIn afterwards. So do get in contact, do give me some feedback on LinkedIn. But yeah, this is great. I'm seeing some positives. Really pleased to be seeing that. Keep going. And this is interesting because at the beginning, pretty much everyone said they felt that the BAs should have it in their wheelhouse. So I haven't asked quite the same question, so it's not easy to compare, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, seeing some positives there. How many answers have we got? Might get a few more. Brilliant. I'm glad that people have largely found it interesting and thought-provoking, and it'd be great to get a follow-on session in the calendar. It looks like there's some interest in that. So I'm going to drop out of there now and just come out of screen sharing if I can find where I am. So you can see me and I can see you.
Fantastic session, Saffron. Fantastic. My
Thank you.
business analyst mind was really enjoying the diagrams. That
Lovely.
really makes my evening. And also
Lovely.
the work that you made in there, I found quite interesting. The project managers, they are at capacity, because that's something I have found in some organizations, that they're the project managers who deal with change. So it was quite interesting how that was going for business analysts. And I also like the Venn diagram. I think is a fantastic tool to find in any organization who is doing what to position themselves, and definitely the benefit dependency network. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your work.